Okay, Chai. Thanks for
Hi,
coming.
thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Tell me about where you're from.
I was born here in Eugene.
Okay.
Um, from is a hard question for me because I traveled so much as a child. So I was born here in Eugene. I spent a portion of my childhood in Salem. And then I have been all over the country and essentially all over the world and plan to continue. So from, I guess, could be summarized as from here.
Okay.
But the majority of my life hasn't been spent necessarily here. So.
Well, so where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in the Mariana Islands. I was on the island above Guam, Saipan. It's a U.S. territory over by the Mariana Trench. I got to visit the Philippines and Thailand and Japan, and had wonderful experiences there. And yeah, that's where I went to high school predominantly.
Mm. So is that military related with your family?
I wasn't there for military reasons, though my family does have a military background. That's a really interesting story in itself, though. I was adopted by my aunt, and she was a poli-sci major who then transitioned into education when she saw the need for greater education, especially in the high school realm, when it comes to social studies and economics specifically. Because when you're looking at the political science aspect of a culture of a civilization, you often end up seeing those gaps when you're looking at advancement and history. You see those gaps and where systemically they are the most prevalent and impacting of the growth. So she decided to create a solution in that and go be a teacher herself. And she ended up going over there because it's a U.S. territory, and their need was huge. Yeah.
Well, so that must have been tough to transition to the other side of the world in a sense for high school. Was that a difficult time for you?
No.
No.
I don't struggle with transitions. When you come from a highly unstable childhood, where transitions are the thing that you know as stability, like that is the most consistent thing for you, you become very adaptable. You can adapt to any environment, any culture, any group, and you are adept at learning how to make the best out of anywhere you are, any situation. And that's definitely something that I'm grateful for and has been a huge part of my life. But going over there was the easiest thing ever. It was leaving there specifically that's been the hardest place for me to leave. And I have always wanted to go back. It's the one place that like really truly felt like home culturally and just environmentally, especially with my medical conditions, and what that area and that culture provided nutritionally, and the humidity there, way better for my breathing. And just the sunshine, the amount of vitamin D you get, and the activity level that you have, and that is just so prevalent culturally there, like walking places instead of driving, going and playing on the beach, swimming. The activity level, I was in the best shape of my life. I was feeling the best, like internally, and then the people were so amazing, so amazing. It was hard to transition back to a landlocked place that is gray.
Yeah, Eugene is pretty different.
Yeah, but we have a bright culture here, at least, so
Absolutely.
that helps. So
Yeah. So with your chronic illness, when did you originally start feeling symptoms?
so that can be a difficult question to answer. When did I start feeling symptoms? I would say childhood. I didn't recognize them as symptoms yet. I was the kiddo who got random rashes. I got, what's it called? you know when you get the chicken pox, and then when you get old and you become like in your 60s and you get that other rash.
Oh, right. I was just talking about this the other day. It'll come to us at some
It'll
point.
come to us.
Yeah.
So I got a rash that you get generally in your 60s, 70s in 2nd grade. Pretty sure I was the youngest case at the time in the state of Oregon.
Wow.
And that wasn't yet an indicator somehow to medical professionals. Though in their defense, I wasn't often seen by doctors as a child. Like I said, highly unstable childhood, lots of transitioning, then foster kiddo, then adopted. So with that, you don't build consistent rapport. But after that came, I would say, in middle school, fatigue. Such intense fatigue. I would wake up tired. It was hard to focus in class. My vision started declining, but more than that, there were neurological symptoms that weren't yet being recognized. In fact, I only started recognizing them in the last year, once educating myself on these conditions. When looking at papers that were bright white, I would get headaches. And turns out that has to do with the contrast of the dark letters on the white paper. And the headaches combined with the being so fatigued. Like, I can't express enough the amount of fatigue that I have faced overall from such an early age, and how impactful that can be in so many ways. Because in schools you get labeled as lazy, or as not engaged, uninterested. It's like it's like your words stop being seen, or stop being heard, rather, when you say, no, I'm interested in this, I love this, I'm passionate about this, when your body is showing everybody, I'm exhausted, and I am not active and excited, because it's tired. The tired that is in your bones tired. So that was a huge factor. And then after that came the pain. I don't remember what age the pain started. I just remember suddenly it was there. And it was my back and my knees and my neck. My knees, I was running cross country, and I would have come in 3rd in Saipan. And I'd worked really, really hard for this, and my knee gave out. It just didn't go where it was supposed to when my foot hit the ground. And so with my knees, I can pop my knee completely out of socket, put my fingers under it, and pop it back. I thought that was normal, because in my family, being hyperbendy, it's just normal. Turns out it's not normal. And turns out that level of tiredness is not normal. And growing pains to the level that I had them, to where it felt like somebody was breaking my bones, that was not normal. But it was minimized as that happens to everybody. So I toughened up. And then by 16, my back pain and my neck pain became horrible. Absolutely horrible. And my pain tolerance wasn't built up yet. It was just the beginning of the pain. So for the time and the age I was at, it was a stark contrast to what I had experienced previously. And that came with like carrying my book bag, or being upright for long periods of time, or being active. And I used to love like climbing trees. I can't imagine climbing a tree now. Which is heartbreaking, but also I'm so used to it that I'm like, yeah, you go, get to the top of that tree. I'm jealous of your shoulders. But at 16, which is when I also moved out to live on my own and work and finish high school, it was impactful, especially when it came to me in the work industry, like in as an employee, having to toughen up through that because I didn't yet know how to explain it. And so by 18, I had a cervical radiculopathy in my neck, and I had been in and out of physical therapists, and I had been crying to doctors describing the pain, and they didn't understand. They didn't know where the cause of it was or anything. So by 20, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which a great number of people in society look at as not real. So that was a big transition point. Turns out I don't have fibromyalgia though, which is another funny story.
So when did you then, how long did you live with what you thought was fibromyalgia before that changed?
Up until a year ago.
Okay.
Correction, up until September.
Okay, so very recently.
Yeah, I guess. I don't look at time like a normal person. I don't think my brain can, because it feels like things happen either ridiculously fast or at slug pace. Yeah. It's like 1 second it's 4 in the afternoon, and the next it's 11 at night, and I'm not sure if I can text you back to confirm our meeting today, or if you're asleep. Literally, I blinked and it was 11.
But yeah, so recently you came to that sort of
yes. So recently I got fed up with the lack of answers. And I'm gonna have to rewind a bit for this one. So I'm 28 now, 27, 28. I forgot how old I am. It's fine. This happens a lot. I am 27, I'm turning 28. I just had this conversation with my husband. So over the last, I would say 6 years, my health has declined. Slowly, at first. Very, very slowly. What that looked like for me was, so I started having the pain, as I was saying, and when I was 19, I had my first daughter. Yes. Which happens when you come from a trauma background. You end up leaving the nest and experiencing life and then looking for what you didn't have growing up. So that you can understand it and heal it. And that is definitely what I did. My naivety was, oh my gosh, I was a kid.
Yeah, so young.
Whew, wow. So with that though, I had my first daughter, and that pregnancy itself should have been a huge indicator to doctors, because my knees weren't able to sustain the weight that I had gained. I was in metal knee braces. And on top of that, I was hypoglycemic, which means my blood sugar, whereas it's supposed to be, I would say around 95, 75 to 90. I don't know what the normal blood sugar is for a normal person, honestly, because mine can be anywhere between 50 and 70, and that's normal for me. But my blood sugar was all over the place. My hormones were all over the place. And that pregnancy was a wild ride, to say the least. And so was the birth. And then so was the being a mom and navigating that with chronic illness. When I got sick, it wasn't just, oh, she has the cold. No, it was, she got a cold and now she has pneumonia. But she's not going to recognize it as pneumonia because this is what feeling sick feels like to her. But then when you have a dip in your immune system because you just had a baby, and your hormones are readjusting, especially when you have undiagnosed adrenal function issues, largely because you also had such a traumatic, upbringing that your adrenal output was in fight or flight so consistently as a child, combined with factors like cranial cervical instability, which messes with your nerves and messes with the messages that it's sending to your body about what hormones, how much hormones to produce. So when you have all of that in conjunction, it means that you get even sicker. And so my back got worse. And within the first year, I remember getting to a point where I was in urgent care so frequently that I no longer had a primary care physician. My primary care physician was the guy I regularly saw at urgent care who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. Because it was the only answer he could think of, and because that was what people knew about at the time. And that was still a blessing because it allowed me to get the physical therapy and start kind of being taken more seriously when I went to the doctors. And that happened because I wasn't able to carry my daughter, who was under a year old. I wasn't able to carry her anymore because my back. It's just I couldn't trust it, and it hurt. And then on top of that, my daughter was having all of the same immune symptoms I was. So when she got sick, she was sick. And she was in and out of the hospital with bronchitis and bronchiolitis. And on top of that, she wasn't really gaining weight, even though she was eating. She's always been small, very, very small. And then on top of that, she was allergic to every single diaper. The doctors gave her pee pads. Like, the doctors giving a child pee pads when they show signs of allergies to every single diaper, but doing that because they don't know whether to believe that the parents are changing the diaper because the parents are teens. I was a highly educated teen at this point, okay? I was on the Churchill Community Council. I was involved in my community. I did outreach. I was creating programs for young teen parents, especially ones who came from, rocky backgrounds and were more of the at-risk community. That was me at 20. So that was difficult because they looked at that and their cognitive bias gave us pee pads rather than a mast cell activation syndrome diagnosis, rather than sending us to an allergist. That was my experience with the big realization that something's not right. And so it went from that to random things happening over the years that don't make sense. It became a joke within my family that every year a different system in my body would crap out and then correct itself so that a new one could start. And I mean, my bladder, I've been seen by a urologist because there was a year of incontinence, which is great when you are a waitress. No. So there was that. There were the UTIs that put me on antibiotics, multiple antibiotics, for like a year straight, which wreaks havoc on your body itself. Only to find out that there was never the bacteria that goes along with UTIs.
Oh, God.
It was just the kidney infection symptoms. Like, suddenly, I am in pain when I must pee, and I am bleeding from my urethra. Apparently, that only happens to normal people when they have a kidney infection. No kidney infection. Essentially, it was my body attacking itself, not knowing what was going on, which is more indicative of interstitial cystitis, IC, which later also got diagnosed. And then when you follow that on, it went to, I hemorrhaged in my sleep, had to go to the hospital for that. Couldn't find an exact reason why. It was just like a rupture in my uterine lining and everything. And so that was horrible. I had been laying next to my daughters in bed at that time at my sister's house. We were having a sleepover. It was shortly after my divorce when I was like 23. And there was blood everywhere. And luckily she got it cleaned up before my girls woke up. And they woke up and I was in the hospital. And that was intense. And then through all this time, by the way, I was a single parent and working my butt off. So I ended up the following week just getting right back to work while healing and not supposed to be walking, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
It's got to pay the bills, right?
Mm.
So then it went from that to, I guess the next most notable things would have been when I got remarried when I was 25, I think. Yeah, I got remarried when I was 25 to an amazing man. He is a veteran now, but he was active duty Army at the time. And he and I moved to New York because he was stationed on Fort Drum. That place is cold. I don't recommend, especially if you have bone problems. Nope.
Avoid there, yeah.
Pain. It is the land of pain. It is the land of, have you ever felt your joints be frozen on the inside? Yeah, that's what it feels like. It's not fun. And when we got there, it was the same usual health things, the colds that were actually a lot more serious. It was, okay, I notice in my jaw, it feels like I have popcorn stuck. It turns out I don't have popcorn stuck between my teeth. It's my own gums growing over my teeth, which turned out to be a cemento-ossifying fibroma, a random tumor. Just, it's there. Yeah. I have great jokes on that one. The way back from that diagnosis, I was like, my husband was like, it's a tumor. And I was like, yeah, so I would like to go get a tattoo and a smoothie, and for you to say yes to any of my requests today, but also know that this isn't me talking, it's the tumor talking. Yes, or getting it removed, being like, I've always wanted a more chiseled jawline.
Oh, there
you know, doctors don't know how to handle you when you've been through that much medical trauma, and just pop off like, yeah, this is great. Actually, I already researched this. I can tell you exactly what I have, and I just need you to confirm it, and I'm going to make horrible, terrible jokes the entire time that are going to make you question my mental stability. Yeah. It's fun. So there was the tumor, then there was the lack of fertility, and then there was my thyroid. For the 8 months that I was there, every single month there was a different medical disaster, either between myself or my husband. Because turns out he has the same condition that's also undiagnosed in his family. And so basically my body started falling apart. I was lactating without being pregnant. I was unable to get pregnant. My hormones were all over the place. I gained 40 pounds within a few months when I had never been able to really get over 130 pounds my entire life unless I was pregnant. Generally, I stuck around 120. And I gained weight extremely quickly. They thought I had Hashimoto's. But there were still some labs and stuff that came back inconclusive. And then I came back to Oregon after an accident that happened there, or a couple accidents that really impacted our lives. And when I came back to Oregon, I started working again, and I was working more than full-time. I was working 80 plus hours a week because I was supporting 2 households, the one there and the one here, while my husband was recovering from his own accident. And I needed to be able to trust my body, and I couldn't, because working and being on my feet, I would end up with my feet breaking, like broken bones in my feet from what? From walking? Yes. Or I would end up with stomach flu-like symptoms where I couldn't eat. Turned out it was my stomach motility and mast cell activation syndrome, which is basically my body reacting to, honestly, what it was my stress with an allergic reaction that affected my digestion and my ability to go into that rest and digest state. So then I started losing weight. I lost 40 pounds in 3 months. And then my eardrums rupturing in my sleep. That one was a fun one. I don't react like normal people do to medications. It's also very common with my condition. I am highly sensitive, so taking something like oxycodone for my eardrums having holes in them, which is extremely painful, by the way, not an option for me. I will throw up, and the world will spin and be all rainbows, and then I'll be asleep. When you're a single mom, that can't happen. Which essentially at that time I was again, because he was on one side of the country and I was with our girls over here. So I discovered anti-inflammatories were a godsend, because a shot of Toradol, which is a anti-inflammatory that you can get at the hospital, took away every ounce of pain, and I was able to work on it. Like, what? Why are we giving oxycodone when inflammation is the cause of pain? That is literally what causes pain in your body. So then I realized I have widespread inflammation, which led to TikTok.
Okay.
You know, a great source of information from communities worldwide.
Right.
Where I found this interesting TikTok about if you can clap your feet.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't seem related, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can clap your feet, which I can clap my feet.
Oh, okay, kind of like clapping your hands, okay.
And
Getting
if
souls together.
you can do weird things with your body, like put your thumb on your arm, if your hands go back like that, your thumbs go back like that. If you wake up in the morning and your shoulders are dislocated, if you have clothes hanger pain through your shoulders and neck, then you might have hypermobility, which led me down that rabbit hole, which led me to Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and MCAS and all of these things. And we're researching them extensively while also working more than full time and creating a program here in the community for kids who are in foster care, who are in the staying in hotels because they need help transitioning into foster homes. So while doing all of that, I was doing all of this medical research, reading medical journals and talking to doctors and reaching out to professionals across the country, honestly. Diving in, compiling reports, because at this point I learned that my doctors won't hear me. They'll just give me an anxiety med if I go to them and tell them what I think's going on. Because that had been what had happened for 12 years. That was September. So then in September I saw that first TikTok. Within a month I found a naturopath. Because I had gone to the naturopath, I had gone to my doctor's, and my doctor wasn't available. And this guy was. And I went in there ready to fight, but honestly, I was ready to go to a state psychiatric facility because the pain and the lack of being able to trust my body were so intense. And the consistently being told that it was my brain, it was my mental health, rather than an actual thing going on with my body. I finally started to believe it and started to think I was going crazy when I wasn't. But I was ready to be checked into a facility because life was just not worth it, not worth the pain and the struggle. And watching my body break and it risk my entire family's stability. And then this naturopath said these amazing words. Do you know what an ANA is? And has anybody ran one? An ANA is autoimmune panel. Autoimmune conditions can cause widespread systematic dysfunction. And that right there was a turning point in my life as a whole, because turns out I have 2 autoimmune diseases. And that was validation. That's not in my head, that my body's actually doing something. So on top of those 2 autoimmune diseases, I also have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and MCAS and POTS. And a couple other conditions, because with a genetic abnormality, with a genetic, forgetting the word, a genetic condition.
Right.
By the way, there's neuro symptoms like brain to mouth dysfunction, speaking. It gets hard sometimes. Anyway, so with a condition like that, you don't necessarily get symptoms. You get comorbidities. And comorbidities are other conditions that are caused by your underlying umbrella condition. For example, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which is a connective tissue condition that basically it's how we create collagen in our bodies, how we synthesize collagen. And because ours is different, we're hypermobile. Our collagen is more stretchy. Everything's more stretchy. Nothing is held in place. Then when you look at that, your spine isn't held in place. So when you have discs that move and that are hypermobile, you have nerves in your spinal cord that are then affected. Well, those nerves deal with your parasympathetic and your sympathetic body functions, like your heartbeat, your digestion, your basically everything, your breathing, everything that's supposed to function automatically in your body, that would be your parasympathetic nervous system reactions. So then you get into autonomic nervous system dysfunction or dysautonomia. So your EDS caused your neck to be unstable, which caused stomach motility and gastrointestinal problems. It causes POTS. Your heartbeat doesn't beat right, so therefore you're not getting the blood you need to your brain, and you get dizzy when you stand up and everything goes black and people think you're weird because you just freeze. And it causes adrenal dysfunction, which can also cause things like borderline personality disorder, emotional regulation issues, being in a higher state of traumatic response, which can lead to higher levels of inflammation, which inflammation itself is degenerative. It can lead to diabetes. It can lead to so many conditions. But what is it? Is it those conditions that are the cause, or is it the Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome? So we don't get symptoms. We get comorbidities. Okay, so that's how that happened.
Yeah.
And that's how I got there. So, yeah, that was September.
Wow, okay. So
Yeah.
you've been on a long journey since then of research.
Oh, yeah. And it was the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, by far. Besides birthing my babies and marrying my husband. I love them.
Yeah.
They're kind of the greatest other things that exist in the whole world. So, yeah. And that's a fact, by the way, not a personal view. They are the greatest. I can prove it scientifically.
And then so with learning about all these different diagnoses that you have, what did that change for you in context to the way you treat it or your mentality around it, or what's different now for you?
If you ask a doctor how they would treat EDS, sadly 9 times out of 10 they would say there is no treatment. You can't treat it. It's in your cells. It's how your cells write themselves. It's genetic. My daughter recently said something to me, because both my daughters also have EDS. And one of them, the symptoms are just, they're all there. She's 6. She is 6, she's in 1st grade, and she is the strongest advocate I've ever met in my life. The advanced thinking that she has around empathy and her condition and the understanding of it, and the confidence that she has in speaking up to her teachers and instructors and the people who are supposed to be her guides, to guide them in how to support her is beautiful. So recently she said to me, just so nonchalantly, that, yeah, she was going to beat EDS. She was going to beat Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And initially I went to say the same thing my doctors have. You can't treat it. It's not something you can beat, sweetie. And my husband looked at me once I got 2 words out, just waiting to see how I handled that. And I backpedaled so fast, and I'm like, you're right. Don't ever lose that, because I believe in you. You can beat it. People are going to say that you can't, but prove them wrong, just like Mama has. And that is what it changed for me. I finally had an explanation, which allowed me to do my own research. I had a name for something that I could connect the dots between all of the different pieces. With EDS, there is so little research. People think that it's a rare condition. It's not. I would venture to say in the next 10 years it's going to come out that 1 in 5 people have it. Yeah. And I'll probably be right, because I haven't been wrong so far in any of my research. And I know that sounds cocky. But when you're this invested, when it's literally what has stood between life and death for you, personally choosing to live or not for you, you get invested. And I'm not a person that can let a problem or a barrier, I can't accept it. There's a saying, it's part of the 12-step program, I'll remember it in a second. To change the things you can and to accept the things you can't, basically. I don't accept the things that I can't. I don't. Status quo, It's a movable line. You can abolish it. You can jump over it. Who puts that there for you? Who determines that for you? You. You determine what you're willing to accept. And yeah, you could say it's a fact. You can't fix a genetic condition. No, but you can treat it. You can figure out why it's there. Is it because, I don't know, so there's this whole thing about the MTHFR gene, and that giving people with a different expression of the MTHFR gene folic acid during pregnancy, okay, which is prenatals, basically, when their body can't take man-made folic acid and digest it, and basically you're poisoning their body. And that's during their pregnancy when they're creating the neural tubes and the genetics for an individual. Maybe that is a contributing factor, because that affects whether you can filter out hormones. That affects your, neural development, your genetic development from the earliest point of pregnancy. Is that a factor? Who knows? Who's doing the research? There's not enough research, and there's not enough funding for research, and it's widespread throughout the entire world that the Ehlers-Danlos Society and the people supporting this condition are fighting so hard for it to be recognized. There are patients becoming doctors. Like, you can read about it. There's beautiful articles on it. There have been patients who have become doctors because they haven't seen enough doctors trying to treat it. And through my own experience, I have had to tell doctors what the condition is, bring in the research for them, and educate them on the condition before we could go forward with anything, because they didn't know it existed. Like, I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression a few months back for my shoulders hurting and me not being able to lift my arms. Okay, I can't drive anymore. And when I went and told my doctor this, my doctor at the time said, yeah, I think it's anxiety and depression. Here's 3 psychotropic drugs. I don't know how you'll react. I'm not going to look at your chart and see the fact that you have very adverse reactions to medication. That's probably also in your head. And a week later, I went to a different doctor. Turns out I have supraspinatus tendinosis. I struggle with words with S's.
Oh, you got it out great.
And my shoulders are degenerating. In fact, tendinosis is past tendinitis. It's where they're already degenerated, and basically my rotator cuffs are screwed, which is just not something that anxiety causes.
Yeah.
You know, my anxiety didn't erode my tendons. And if it did, we have an epidemic that we really need to address, because all of everybody I know is anxious as, pardon my French.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, before we dissolve into puddles of mush, because anxiety apparently can dissolve things, let's start like communicating and actually taking people seriously. So it provided, finding out about my EDS provided a path, provided a direction and a purpose. And that is the greatest thing, because for me, it's been a point where I was able to choose what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And it had to do with my health. It had to do with my kids' health, my husband's health. And honestly, my family and his family's generational trauma, that was the key to breaking the generational trauma pattern within our family, because my mom had passed away a year ago, and it was due to a complication from undiagnosed Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. They didn't know that she had a higher risk for her organs to rupture because of the kind of EDS we have, which essentially killed her. My adoptive mother, my aunt, most of my trauma was because of her trauma that she was going through, and her inability to process it in my childhood, when she was taking on, you know, a kiddo for her sister, and also had an intense autoimmune disease and genetic condition that had comorbidities. Her body was falling apart and her family was falling apart. She didn't know how to handle that, plus handle having a kiddo at the same time. And she was only, I think, my age. I've watched families fall apart because they weren't heard at the doctors, because their doctors weren't educated enough about these conditions as they evolve and as the research comes out, and because OHP and medical insurances, they create huge barriers to getting the tests. And so the purpose that it created for me is looking at those barriers and those patterns and saying, nope, I don't accept them. Let's change that. And I found out in September about this condition. I got it validated within a couple months. Every single thing I brought to my doctors was correct. Now my doctor just turns the screen to me when I get new test results and says, do you see what I see? Yeah. And now I have a business where I get to use my research and use my ability to make connections and use the fact that I have the biggest cojones of anybody I've ever met. And I'm willing to call anybody at any level of organization or government needed, and I will find out how, to ask a question so that I can provide an answer or make a change. Like, I'm able to use that to change the narrative completely. Not just for myself, but for everybody. I'm able to change how businesses look at accommodations. I'm able to change how schools support invisible and chronic illnesses because of what I'm witnessing with my daughter and when she's going to school. And I'm able to see the problems within the system from my own experience, from the experiences that I am hearing about, learning about through constant communication with people all over the world. And I'm able to see the systemic issues and not look at them as problems anymore, because I solved mine. So there are just opportunities for further knowledge, further innovation, and for really great changes that are going to be made. And I've already started making. Yeah. So that's what it did. I love my condition because of that. I'm resilient, I am driven, and I have a purpose for it. And it's like a gift, almost. It's completely changed my mindset. You're also able to see people a lot differently when you're faced with a condition, because you can either be mad at the doctors, mad at your teachers, mad at the invalidation, or you can see that that's a whole symptom in itself as well, and you can choose to support their growth and change.
Yeah.
So makes you a lot happier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what advice would you give to people who perhaps are feeling similarly and don't know how to approach their doctors, or don't know how to go forward?
You are the expert on your body. If you're feeling it, then you're feeling it. Nobody can tell you that you're not. And nothing anybody does is because of you. If they're not able to hear you, that's not because of you. Get a different doctor. Remember, they work for you. Don't look at society's view of doctor shopping or whatever, okay? Because you can't let other people's views impact you taking control of your health. It's life or death. It is happiness or misery. It's how you are going to walk through life. Are you going to let somebody else be in control of that? No. So, best advice I can give is keep speaking up, keep looking for answers, and if your life doesn't allow you the time or energy or whatever it is to be able to take on that venture, get yourself an advocate, because there are people out there that want to help you, that want you to be healthy just out of the kindness of their hearts and because they've been down the same path. And don't give up. You're not alone, and your story is echoed across an entire community of people who they get it. You just got to find them. Yeah.
It's a great message. Is there anything else you'd like to shout out or share?
Yes. I don't know. Oh my. First off, it's been really, really hard to not be all over the place. I have ADHD and I'm neurodivergent as all hell. So sitting still has been so hard. Whew,
I know,
I need a wiggle.
I kind of wish I have a little bit of that too.
Yes. Gosh, I wish I could do a whole thing on the fact that children are brilliant, and we don't often realize it, but my daughter is one of my biggest inspirations in life because she has this way of thinking where nothing is impossible, but she is empathetic and realistic, bluntly realistic. It's annoying. She will tell me when I'm a mess or when I'm letting a cognitive bias impact something. She'll also do it in multiple languages because she's also ADHD like me, and if she gets bored, she learns something new. Last year it was anatomy and physiology, and this year it's languages and psychology, which is rude because she's 6 and she will destroy any platform you're standing on if it's wrong. She's also the most empowering child I've ever met. Her school does not like her because she will argue with teachers about their cognitive biases in front of the class, and then she will go to the office to call her mother if they have any problem with it. Children, if you empower them and if you give them that place where they feel heard and validated, and they are able to speak on their experience, it's amazing how that will shape a child. Because she now goes to school, and she calls me and she'll be like, Mom, I need you to address this, okay? Or I need you to help me. So I heard this girl say that this other girl was too skinny, which is a whole thing in itself. Okay, we do not talk about other people's bodies because we don't know their medical and life situations, right? But this teacher, okay, the girl said, no, I'm not hungry right now. And the teacher said, you need to finish your food. Can you come help me? Or can you come help this teacher know that that person knows what their body wants right then? And that you cannot force somebody else to do something with their body that does not feel comfortable for them. Okay? And I'm like, oh, girl, tell them that if they suspend you, we're getting ice cream. Like, literally. You can say it in English or Spanish to them, but if you say it in Spanish, I swear if you don't throw in a few bad words for me, then I don't know if we can get ice cream because, like, I kind of want you to get suspended at that point because that's a hill that, you know, I would die on too, right? She's 6.
Yeah.
She's in 1st grade. And these are the reasons she calls me twice a day from school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what? I still have to go in to explain to the adults who are often older than me, hey, so we're going to take a step back. We're going to recognize the reality of the situation. I can actually provide you some quick research for it. Okay? And a training course that my daughter helped me build. All right? So that this isn't a problem in the future.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what children can do as being their own advocates when you give them a voice.
Yeah.
I don't have to talk for my doctor at the doctor's office. I just have to make sure that the doctor can listen. Because she knows what's going on with her body. She can explain what each body system does and how it's affecting her. And she also can make inferences on why. Because I believed that she was smart enough to be able to handle that situation, handle that information, and absorb it. And she did. She's awesome. So yeah, shout out to my daughter. She's kind of amazing and a brilliant genius who's going to take over the world and beat EDS.
That's great.
But yeah, besides that, no, shout out to my business that I'm forming to change the world. You know, typical Tuesday things. Change the medical industry.
Yeah.
Get lunch.
At a time.
And shout out to the naturopaths out there who seem to be the ones who figure it out because they look at bodies differently. And honestly, shout out to doctors who got into the medical, and all of the doctors who became doctors didn't become doctors to say, nah, I don't really feel like treating this. I think it's your anxiety. No, they're burnt out.
Yeah.
That's an epidemic. They're burnt out. Why? We need to be looking at why. And maybe looking at how we can support our doctors a little bit too in treating our bodies. Because if you want the system to work great, you have to see all the parts of it. And then support all the parts of it and make sure it's all working right. So don't just get mad. Get glad. Create solutions. So shout out to basically all of the doctors, and let's take down problems as a whole. Anarchy. Woo. I mean, against problems, you know, that run society. So,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. All right,
Okay.
cool. All right, thanks, Shai. Well, we
Thank
can
you.
end things off there.